regular weekly governance, August 7th, 2025. Last week, we had it a little bit earlier so we can get Garrett on, who we posed some questions to. I also put those in the node operator, and he will be reaching out to the dev team from the Tangle Pay. Those questions were, how are Shimmer and IOTA networks running with the distributed coordinator or not, such as the Tender Co, or is that something different? Can we test the integrating the coordinator committee prior to the airdrop using, if that is Tender Co, or what other method was used to decentralize the Shimmer coordinator validator committee? And then is TanglePay currently using a permanode? Does snapshotting work with Tender Co decentralized coordinator validator committee? That was something that I brought up last week, which was just discussing that, do we have a permanode set up? I think it's pretty key that the ledger is recorded from initial launch, and something I think that we hadn't really discussed before, so something to look into. And then while we're waiting for Garrett to respond with that, there was discussion of, we made the agreement of, and to add on to that, the computer specs being used right now by TakePay. Yeah, that's a good one for sure. To discuss, we did the vote on the airdrop to do an 80-20, 80% Shimmer and 20% IOTA distribution, and the community voted for the 80-20 over the 60-40, which was sort of a revote on the close choices. And then it was brought up by Edward on, should we do a distribution curve versus like capping it at 1 TI? And he posted in the governance an example of distribution curve and explaining that, just by way of an example, this is his post. Here's a tapering graph that would reward participants the cube root of the Shimmer balance. Something like this would always mean more Shimmer would reward more tan, but with diminishing rewards. His thesis, or as he says, my thesis, is that a taper and airdrop curve would still reward the whales, but it would also serve to level the initial playing field on the tan network. In this example, 1 billion Shimmer would reward 1,000 tan, while 2 billion Shimmer would reward 1,260 tan, meaning that, the higher someone has of a balance tapering curve, they get less and less and less and less. So, there's less of a big distribution between whales and non-whales. I think it's interesting. I think that, I don't know how we would come up with that mathematically given a max amount of tan, but if, it could be done, that's one option. I think my concern would still be, regardless, even if they don't get a massive amount, but still, would exchanges get tan? Would, the IF get tan, etc., which I think is a bit of a risk in coming to governance when it's not an individual, but rather than an organization. And it's not an individual that's necessarily purchased IOTA tokens, but essentially minted Shimmer tokens. Just waiting for Bill Poster to type something in the chat.
Yeah, on that note, while Bill Poster is still typing, what's everyone's kind of thoughts on the level of concern that comes to that? Now that the community has decided the 80-20 Shimmer to IOTA, I feel like that entire risk of having, let's say, large institutions or NGOs or people who minted the former tokens, like, that's mostly dissipated now with this allocation split, no?
Yeah, yeah, true. Um, I don't know I mean, what exchange even had Shimmer? Was it because the one exchange went down? Um, and was it MEXC, the only other one that really had Shimmer listed?
Yeah, Bitfinex and then MaxD.
Right. Yeah. Um, yeah, yeah, you're right. I mean, I think it is dissipated. So then I guess it's just a matter of do we uh, level the playing field as per se?
Yeah, I don't know if other people have strong opinions one way or another, but one of the things I'm not really the biggest fan of is this idea of like complete redistribution, um, because there will be shimmer whales who, you know, are actually going to be more bought in because of their stake in shimmer. And if we start to, I don't know, for lack of a better term, do some communist level redistribution where everyone kind of ends up with the same amount, plus or minus 30%, I just see a lot of people who didn't give a damn about shimmer in the first place, um, kind of dumping it, and then the guys who actually gave a damn and are going to get an equally large portion of tan because they invested a large amount in shimmer are going to kind of be shrugging their shoulders and being like, "Hey, what the hell? Now I'm outnumbered by a bunch of people who never cared in the first place and never put the
Hmm.
chips down when it came to shimmer." So that's a risk factor I see there.
It's a good point. And when we were doing governance back in the day, I remember reading a few different examples where whales generally, like 90% of the time at the time, would go with um, the majority of the community and sometimes were needed to support the majority of the community. But it's kind of like people say, oh, well, if there's these whales that can control governance, they would, um, I don't know, do something negative in a way or attack the network. But it really makes no sense because if they're a whale, then they want the benefit of the network because that's the best value for them. And generally, this is seen time and time again where the whales actually support the positive growth of the network and the community at large. So yeah, I think that makes sense. And yeah, they would be supportive and benefiting and looking to help out because it's only going to help their bags. Um, Now, I want to say just to because I know Edward's not here, but I feel like he did or had a way that he articulated it that it wasn't a redistribution, but it really does seem like to an extent redistribution. Um, and then the aspect is, I mean, it's still it's only 10% of the supply. It's not like it's the whole supply, So there's still supply left to for individuals if they are, really interested or want to, the token for an investment value or a governance value or whatever, they can still buy it on the open market. So, even of 10%, if someone's a whale, they're still not like a major whale in relation to the total supply.
Yeah, it's true. And maybe that's where, just to simplify things and get this dropout relatively sooner, we kind of go with a linear approach there.
Yeah. Um, what do you think, Bill Poster? Lion Alpha, any thoughts?
For the particular part, no, sorry for that, but no, I don't have a strong opinion on this specific matter, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just more for moving forward rather than go into another vote and another vote and another vote and drawing it out. I mean, I think again we've been saying for the last 4 weeks that if we can take the spreadsheet and actually put tangible numbers in that spreadsheet, this is probably going to give some attraction because now all of a sudden people are going to be able to see. Is the man himself. Um, Edward, can you hear us? Because if you can hear us, I'll give a recap of what we've been discussing. Another discussion was that whales do bring value to networks where if all of a sudden we somehow level the playing field, there's whales that really put a lot of skin in the game when Shimmer was there, and now they're almost not equal, but more on a level playing field with someone that really had no skin in the game in the first place. My experience with whales when I was looking at different governance structures back in the day was that a lot of examples are shown that whales actually generally go for the good of the network, which is generally the good of the community in many ways, where they'll actually, like, let's say it's not a 50+1 majority, it might be like a 60 or a 70, but there's 50+1 of the network going in one way, but the whales generally kind of bring that over the line to bring that majority because they want the best for the network, which is the best for their bags. I think sometimes there's a fear that whales will somehow do something negative to a network, but I'm very rare that that's ever really happened because essentially it then hurts their own bags. Yeah, so I think the question is, maybe now just do we move forward? Do we do a linear, no cap, no blacklist, do the airdrop? And what we'd be able to do, and also I think make it easier because we know the set number, 10% of supply. We've got the snapshot Excel file. We have the distribution now, so we can pretty much populate those, and then people can tangibly see what they're going to get in this airdrop, and hopefully that gets some attention going from outside our little community. Yeah, yeah. Um, Edward's still saying, I would still recommend a taper. Whales do still get the most of anyone. Linear is the most simple approach, yes. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's the KISS method, keep it simple, and I think there's going to be a lot more complex things that we look into, again, later on in stage, developing a much more governance structure and technical, going into voting, methods with tokens, and we got a lot more to build. But I think, the 80-20 does mitigate the risk of organizations having like major governance stance. And then, even for the whales, the overall distribution isn't going to be major because this is only 10% of the supply, which is another thing we were talking about. Do we want to do a quick vote in this group, linear or taper?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. Bill Poster, can you put that up?
As far as next steps go on some of the technical things, I guess that's going to be the main discussion point, no?
Yeah, and that's like where we're waiting on Garrett to get back from the Tangle Pay team. What we did figure was that they don't have the Tender Co. They're not using the Tender Co. currently. They're basically just using a central coordinator private Tangle. And there was no, he didn't know if they were using a permanode or not. So I think those are really the big things of, we want, of course, a distributed validator committee, a distributed network. So